Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this AMPO webinar brought to you by our GIS and data interest group. We have 7 interest groups here at AMPO that help us select the speakers and topics for these webinars. We could not do this work without those terrific volunteers. And of course, we appreciate all of you joining us as well. My name is Ellen Zaviska. I serve on the AMPO staff as our transportation planning manager, and I'm going to kick us off with just one quick housekeeping slide. We've still got folks rolling into the waiting room. I'm going to try to keep up with letting all of them in. I'll ask you to please keep your mic muted while our speakers are doing their things. You are, however, more than welcome to drop your questions or comments into the chat at any time. We encourage side discussions over there. We do record the meeting and we share notes and slides within a couple weeks afterward. So you will have access to all the materials our presenters share. Ask if you don't mind to add your organization to your Zoom handle so we know where you're joining us from, especially when it comes time for Q&A. People keep just popping in. And with that, I will introduce our moderator. Stuart is with the MPO in Lexington, Kentucky, where his transportation has spanned 2 millennia. Not in the entirety of 2 millennia, I'll assume. Since graduating from Eastern Kentucky, he's been a consultant, a geography teacher. He's been a couple stints at Lexington MPO, as well as being at the University of Kentucky. Currently serves as assistant director to the Lexington MPO. Enjoys spending time with his wife, who's a retired teacher, and his family, including 3 beautiful grandkids, which is lovely. And with that, I'm going to ask Stuart to introduce our topic and speakers.
Thank you, Ellen. So, of course, today's topic, and I won't read this verbatim because I want to give everybody a chance to get started, but we are going to be talking about the innovative uses of travel demand models. So just, we've got 3 presentations by speakers who are just going to talk about how they're using their models to do more than just the traditional modeling stuff. Go ahead and move to the next slide. Our first speakers are John Hyder and Jan Liu, mostly John to start out, and Jan will be here to answer the technical questions. And they're from Mid-Ohio, and they're going to be talking about how they're using their model to do community impact analysis, among other things. After that, next slide, we have Alex Raimondi from Charlotte, North Carolina. And she's going to be talking about how they use their model to do a lot of equity analysis. And finally, we have Kent Schellinger from the South Jersey Transportation Planning Organization. And he's going to be talking about a unique way they go about getting seasonal population data. So with that, I will turn it over and let John get started.
Thank you, Stuart. Hi, I'm John Hyder. I'm with the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we use our in-house travel demand model to do community impact analysis looking at equity and justice issues. As he said, I'm John Hyder. I've been with the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission for a few years now, but I've been working in Central Ohio for the last 10 years. Yan with me, she's the technical expert. She's the modeler with our data and forecasting division, focusing on travel demand modeling and community impact analysis, and has an extensive research background in these issues as well. So to give a little bit of a background, MORPC, or Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, has 2 different models that we maintain and operate. The land use model, which looks at population, employment, and growth forecasts. Then that also feeds into our travel demand model, which has the roadway network, speeds, intersections, social economic data, basically the travel demand modeling parts of that dichotomy. And so one exciting thing we're starting now is we are going to expand our travel demand model. Currently our MPO, which you can see outlined in blue, includes Franklin, Delaware, and parts of Union and Fairfield counties and Licking. We're going to expand it to cover some of the more exurban and rural counties like Marion, Morrow, Union, Madison, Pickaway. This is due to large economic developments that are happening in these outlying counties, like the Intel plant in New Albany, the Honda plant, and then a number of other big economic development opportunities that are coming to our region. And it'll help us to provide these travel demand modeling services to more communities in our region. And so the land use model, similar to a lot of other land use models, it includes a lot of data. It's a very data hungry model. We look at land use data, we look at some demographic data, future land use, environmental concerns, and other things of that nature that all feed into forecasts. This last long range planning round, we have forecast out to 2050. And so we can kind of see how the region is going to change and grow and how that will affect travel demand modeling. And so our travel demand model itself, it's an activity-based model, which essentially is a simulation of the trips that people take throughout the day. It's, commute trips, but all trips in all modes within the transit and vehicles. And so some of the things we use this modeling for are, of course, our community impact analysis, which is looking at the equity considerations, traffic studies, traffic growth rates, a number of other different core products that our MPO and our Planning Commission care about. And so now getting into some of the methodology of how we actually use the travel demand model for this community impact analysis, we look at the low-income minority population as well as a number of other different demographic characteristics. You can see here mapped out, we have on the left the minority population distribution, and then on the right, we have the low-income population distribution. And then we take all of that data from the census data and put it into our zone of interest for this community impact analysis. It's any traffic analysis zone that is either twice the regional average percentage for minority or poverty populations, or were identified by the US DOT as a persistent poverty census tract or historically disadvantaged tract. And so you can see kind of how the region's minority and poverty population compares to the rest of the state of Ohio. The population in poverty is a little bit less than the rest of the state. The minority population is a little bit more. So we take all of this into account when we're looking at the impacts on these groups. And so when we look at our model network, we have a base network that is the base year. For our last planning effort, it was 2021 as our base year. That takes the current population and the current road network and codes that into our model. We then also look at our forecast year for both a build and no build scenario. The 2050 no build assumes our projected population, but then the no build roadway network that only includes the existing and committed projects on the roadways. We then also look at our MTP or Metropolitan Transportation Plan network, which has all of the fiscally constrained projects that are included in our long-range plan, and then see the differences between that and the current and the no-build. We also do bike and pedestrian modeling and forecasting. This is done outside of our traditional travel demand model. It's done in GIS. We have an interconnected sidewalk layer and bike network that looks at low-stress bike networks, and then we do some analysis on the access for those groups as well. And so you can kind of see what it looks like. It's very complicated, a lot of data points. On the left, it's our transit network from the GTFS. And then on the right, it's the roadway network. And you can see how those all interact with these traffic analysis zones and the centroids that are the center of activity of each of those zones. And so the bike ped ends up looking something like this, where it's showing the travel between zones where it's possible, the low stress bike network. So some of the metrics we look at specifically for this are time period, the mode, and then the access to different opportunities, including shopping, hospitals, retail, universities, and other things of that nature. And so this is an example of some of the results that we get from this in our community impact analysis. We look at the comparison between the minority population, the non-minority population, poverty and non-poverty for each mode and each travel time period. So you can see on the top left, we have the number of jobs that are accessible within 20 minutes driving. And you can see that the no build and the 2050 MTP increases that number over the current number. And you can kind of see that trend on a lot of different of these charts. You can see the jobs within 40 minutes of walking, of biking, and you can see that we look at this comparison as a percentage of the population subgroup compared to the rest of the population and the non-poverty and non-minority population. Some more examples of that, we have transit time to a college, drive time to a hospital, and you can see that we look at all of these for the no build future, the build future, and then the current to make sure that the projects we're proposing don't have a disproportionate impact on any sensitive population. So for active transportation, we take that GIS analysis and look at the number of jobs that can be reached in 20 and 40 minutes by walking and biking on the low stress bike network, which includes on-street facilities and off-street shared use paths. And this is all done in GIS using output that was generated from our land use modeling. Then looking kind of more of a micro picture in project evaluation, we also look at this for each project that we look to include in our long range plan. We look at the minority population that is forecast to use that facility. So that's done through the model. You can see in this instance, 26% of the project's users would be forecast to be a minority population, elderly population, disabled population, and the poverty population. Those all factor into our metrics of whether we should include the project in our fiscally constrained plan. And so obviously there's a lot of changes in the landscape of environmental justice and community impact. Our initial process was designed as a result of the EJ executive order that I'm sure most people are aware of. This was rescinded this last year, so we are now making some adjustments to make sure that we're compliant, but we are still making sure that we look at these impacts to low-income minority groups as well as other population groups. And we've been awarded funding. It's still pending funding, but we are hoping to expand this to have a more all-encompassing look at all the different population groups that we can slice and dice within our data. So in conclusion, our in-house travel demand team is awesome. They do a great job of coming up with these forecasts that are accurate and can drive our planning for the future transportation facilities. We have two different models. We have the land use model and then the travel demand model, which is fed in the socioeconomic data from the land use model feeds into that travel demand model. The community impact analysis, which is what our new name for that equity analysis is, it looks at the impact of proposed projects on the population groups relative to one another, and then also on the micro level, looking at project prioritization. We also incorporate that. And so the results can be used locally, or they can be used for any number of plans that we have in our pipeline. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Stuart, who will facilitate any questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, John. That was really good. So does anybody have any questions? If so, I would encourage you to either enter them in the chat or raise your hand. And of course, if you don't have one right now, we'll be taking questions at the end as well. And as we get ready for our next speaker, I am going to go ahead and pop up a poll for everybody. Oh, and we do have a quick question from Paul Bashore with Mark. Paul, would you like to pop on and ask your question?
Sure. Yeah, I was just wondering, we've done some very minimal work with the accessibility tool or the accessibility matrix within ArcGIS Pro and everything like that. I was just wondering, we've looked into OpenTrip Planner and other ones as well. Just was wondering what particular tool set you were using to do those.
I will answer. Should I answer?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Oh, hi. Hi, I'm Yan Liu. I'm the co-presenter here. Like for our accessibility with ArcGIS, like we hired a consultant and they made a tool with kind of our in-house data, but they have kind of built the like with the ArcGIS. I'm not sure it's ArcGIS or ArcPro with the kind of module or something in the ArcGIS to do the accessibility analysis, but we did not. I believe there's no Python or other scripts involved in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. David, Helen, did you have a question?
Yeah, just real quick. So the community impact analysis, you're calling it, or the EO, the community impact analysis is taking, you're renaming it. Will that still include like your EJ or what was like EJ analysis? If it's my understanding, you're just kind of renaming it, but it'll still include like the impacts as you showed on the disparate impacts on like the low income and the disadvantaged populations.
Yeah, that's still going to be a major component. It's part of our adopted plan goals to make sure that there's not a disproportionate impact. So even if it's not federally required to look at it, we're still interested as an MPO at looking at that and making sure that our projects fall within that framework.
Okay, and that extra money that you mentioned, was that from the state or the federal?
It was a federal grant that was awarded in 2024, late 2024. It's still being held up at this point. We don't have any news on whether that's moving forward or not, but that was meant to overhaul this whole system.
Okay. All right, thanks a lot.
All right, thank you, David. I think we have time for one more question before we move on to Alex. Brenna Root, do you have would you like to read your question or ask your question?
Sure. So you had mentioned specifically that you were looking to expand this to more of the rural parts of your commission or areas. Can you talk a little bit more about, some of those ideas that you are planning on implementing within the more rural areas, or how this would be applied within those areas?
So it would be applied in a similar way as the MPO. The expansion to the more rural areas of our area are a result of big economic developments that are happening on the periphery. So we're expanding the coverage of our travel demand model to include those counties. So historically, we've been focused on the more urban core MPO area, but we also have a Central Ohio rural planning organization through our commission that looks at those outlying counties, and that this expansion will allow us to cover all of that area.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, and I'll go ahead and I've shared the results from the first poll, and I will stop sharing that. And with that, we will move on to Alex.
Right. Make sure we can share here. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Just double check.
Yep, looks great.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So hi, my name is Alex Ramundi. I'm a travel demand modeler here at Charlotte Department of Transportation, and we have been looking into how we might evaluate accessibility within our model, something that's a little new to us here in the Charlotte region. Before I get into kind of talking about the tool, I wanted to briefly kind of talk about the Metro Atlanta Regional Model and what it is and what we do here. So we're like in a unique position because I work for Charlotte DOT, but I work with a lot of partners and are managing across 2 states, 13 counties. We have 4 MPOs, 1 RPO, and then also working with 2 state DOTs. And the primary use of our model currently is to support the development of metropolitan transportation plans. We also are required to do a lot of air quality conformity work and then also TIP program. So we're looking right now, we've been looking into how we can evaluate project impacts and how we can evaluate them based off how they change access. So candidly, we're very much in development, but I'm excited to share kind of what we've been working on with you all. Before I get into the tool, I wanted to talk a little bit about why we should be measuring accessibility in general. So I recently attended a presentation from Dr. Matthew Palm at UNC, and it was all about transportation justice. And as many as you may know, transportation impacts many outcomes for our residents, from access to food to participation in school, healthcare, social capital, mental health, and even voting. So it's a really important thing for us to be looking at as planners and travel demand modelers as well. So what the tool does that we've been working on, and we've been working with Caliper, who manages develops Transcad, the software that we use for our modeling purposes, it's looking at how we compare transportation projects based on how they improve accessibility. So it calculates access to jobs, schools, hospitals, and other destinations using 2 different types of calculations. One is a distance decay curve that we've developed using our household travel survey that we recently collected for the region in 2023. And then the other is a time-based threshold, so a more traditional based look at how we can measure access. So there's benefits and limitations to both of these, as many of you may know. So the benefits of the distance decay curve is it really reflects behavior more realistically. So we may be willing to travel further for a job than we may be for access to a grocery store. So it captures that gradation of access. It's a little more difficult to explain to decision makers, and you also need a lot of good survey data to develop these curves to begin with. And then the other way we're calculating it is using traditional time thresholds. These are really great because they're simple and intuitive. It's really easy to see who's in and inside a critical threshold. So how many people can access a job from an origin in 15 minutes or 30 minutes? Very clear for decision making. One of the limitations, though, is the kind of the drop-offs that we set sometimes feel a little arbitrary. And there could be someone that's just right outside that drop-off. And depending on your travel time, may fall in or out of that curve. So the tool requires a lot of input data. Our analysis area is our whole model, but unfortunately, we only have data for points of interest for North Carolina. So we're limited by our subscription to Data Axle. So we have 2022 data, so over 200,000 points. This is all of our data on points of interest, such as schools, jobs, grocery stores, and other things. But for this process, our tool is being funded by CRTPO, Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization. So we're only doing application for a 3-county area. So with that in mind, we felt okay with leaving out the South Carolina data for now, but that's a goal to include in the future. The network data set, so our traditional travel demand model is focused on interstates, expressways, primary roadways, collectors, but does not have local streets in it. So for this effort, it was a pretty big lift to include all streets. So all the local streets, making sure that they're coded with free flow and congested speed estimates, functional class, lanes, speed limits, and more. Our model did have transit facilities in there, so routes and stops, but it did not have information on sidewalks, bicycle facilities, and then off-street trails. So as part of this effort, we've included all of that network data so we can skim on it. And then in addition, we have information from our partners on our future population and employment, so that land use data. And then this tool is developed at the block level. So all of our blocks nest within our TAZs. And so we're able to bring in census data and information that we don't have in our travel demand model, such as zero core households and more information on demographics. So that gives us a lot more abilities to evaluate these projects as they relate to different populations. So just to kind of look at this at a full scale, so in purple, you're seeing all of our North Carolina TAZs. In the mustard color, this is our South Carolina. Our application, again, is just CRTPO. So this is Iredell, Mecklenburg, and Union. When we look at how our network has changed this process or improved to serve this tool, this is our regional model with our expressways, interstates, and our major thoroughfares. Now we're layering in our all streets. So as you can see, a lot more network that we're skimming on. Just to zoom in there, you can see all the centroid connectors that are needed to connect at a block level to perform this analysis. And so processing, so as I mentioned, this tool was developed with Caliper. It's developed using GIS decay, and it's only available within the Transcat platform. It includes two components. So we have an accessibility model that looks at projects as they relate to walking, biking, transit, and vehicles. And then we had a visualizer component that helps us kind of visually see what the outcomes of these projects are. And so as I mentioned, this tool does skimming at the block to block level, and then looking at all these different modes in ways that we haven't been able to look at before, especially as in regards to walking and biking. And so what it ultimately does when it's processing is it's doing those base and project accessibility calculations, looking at total employment, and then it's looking at also work and non-work point of interest accessibilities. And again, we've set the tool up to be kind of flexible, just depending on what decision makers may be looking for, using decay curves and then those thresholds. And the outcome is the results, and it basically tells us what the delta is or what the change in these differences is with or without the project. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the decay curves before I get into the results. So here you can kind of see in our auto, so this is all from our survey data, which has, if you're looking at it closely, has pros and cons. When we're looking at the auto data, we have a really good sample size and we have a lot of information. So what this is telling us is for work trips, people in our region are more willing to travel further distances or be in their car longer, have longer travel times than they are for non-work distances. I will admit that we are currently investing our walking and biking accessibility decay curves because there is a very steep drop off, and that's limited by the survey data that we were able to collect in our household travel survey. So these decay curves, why they're really useful and helpful because they're really reflecting population's behavior in your area. They do have limitations based off the survey data. And then some of the more familiar accessibility calculations you may be with our time threshold. So here we're looking at a 15-minute walking network distance from a project. So looking at employment, and then on the right side, looking at auto accessibility within a larger threshold. So before I kind of jump into the results, I wanted to just talk about this tool. It's got a lot of data in it as well. And part of this is being able to look at different populations. So a lot of the base data that's in here looks at anything from, employment to population, but also some of these different characteristics that we're pulling from the census. And you're able to visualize just on a theme without even looking at a project, where are these different populations located within our region. So I'm going to walk through two scenarios. These are really just test scenarios. We haven't actually applied this tool yet to projects. We've just been really much in the beta phase. So one is a walking project, so where we're adding sidewalks to an existing roadway, and the other is an auto project where we're widening a 2-lane roadway to a 4-lane roadway. And both of these projects are essentially improving travel times along the corridors and improving connections and reducing the amount of time it takes people to get from one point to another. So for a walking accessibility project, so here again, we're looking at adding sidewalks. Probably not too surprisingly, is a lot of the benefits we're seeing are directly on that corridor as you're improving walking times to these destinations. So here we're looking at employment, we're using the decay function, and then we're showing that delta. And so we're seeing where is accessibility to employment improving along this corridor. We can also look at other points of interest. So in here, I pulled accessible transit stops. So again, these destinations are going to be limited about within their reach with whether or not there's transit located nearby the project you're evaluating. So in this case, there are just kind of on the periphery. So that's where we're seeing the greatest improvements to access to transit. And then we can do the same thing for auto projects. So in here, we're looking at the benefits, again, to employment, and we're showing the difference. So how much this project's improving access. And you can start to see that the project benefits for an auto project are more spread out because people are going to be willing to travel larger distances to get to their employment. And then here, just kind of showing you from a accessible grocery standpoint as well. So just again, looking at different things depending on what our partners are interested in seeing and evaluating. And then lastly, just kind of to touch on the equity piece, if of interest, you can start to look at different populations. So here we're looking at only the blocks where the zero car population is greater than the regional average. So this would allow our partners to do further investigation or weighting or scoring to these areas if they wanted to for projects. So some of the things that we're really excited about is a lot of data-driven comparisons. It's very transparent. It can support a lot of inclusive planning initiatives. The limitations, as you may be seeing, is some of the data quality. We'd love to have South Carolina data incorporated, especially with our application area kind of bordering some South Carolina counties. There's also limitations that we have a lot of assumptions built into our models to begin with. And right now, we can only really do project evaluation in batches. So that means we want to kind of do all of our projects at once so we can look at our results rather than just kind of doing projects here and there. Some potential improvements we're looking to is getting additional data to improve this model. And like I said, we're really in the beta stage right now. So we're going to be presenting to our partners, incorporating their feedback, adding more information as they see fit for their work. And so with that, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Alex? And that was excellent, by the way. That was really exciting work that y'all are doing. Well, I'll give everybody a few minutes or a few seconds to think about questions, and I am going to go ahead and launch another poll on how everybody handles their travel demand modeling work. We'll give that a minute or so, and then turn over. David, do you have a question?
Yeah. So yeah, very good presentation, very interesting. So did you say you coded in all the sidewalks and bicycle facilities and trails in the network? That was part of your network?
Yeah, that was like our biggest lift. And we focused mainly on CRTPO to make sure that data quality is at the highest resolution it could be at.
Okay, the MPO, the MPO, the CRT. Okay.
Yeah.
And you worked for the city of Charlotte, was it?
Yes.
Or
Yep.
okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we had a couple other questions. I had a question from David Nelson. David, did you want to share your question?
Sure. I saw that you mentioned there was a couple accessibility packages in Caliper that are not available elsewhere, and I realize that's the context you're speaking in. But have you done modeling in other packages, and have you tried to model accessibility in other packages?
So there is one person on our team who does use, looks like you mentioned Vism. The modeling team is primarily using Transcad and Transmodeler for our work. But I think like to the earlier presentation, we've definitely done some accessibility work in GIS as well, but not explicitly Vism.
Yeah, I was wondering because we have Vism, and there's an opportunity always to do something else, like to use the Caliper products, but it's kind of a a large translation because you still have to use your old model for a while and work on your prep for the revision and so on and so forth. So
Yes. Great question. Yeah.
All right, we had one more question from Paul Bashore with Mark, and take that before we move on.
Sure. Yeah. We've been analyzing the data axle data and trying to, cross check it with like LHD and everything. Just wondering from your perspective, what are you all looking at there, and are you confident in the data that you're getting from them?
Yeah. There's a lot of pains with data axle, to speak very candidly, and challenges with LHD too, as far as where you're reporting your workplace and where people are actually working. Um, we were looking at it as far as how we look at our SE data and kind of seeing from a total perspective if we're seeing similar points of interest for jobs and employment. And as part of our partners, they use data axle and they kind of clean it and review it themselves. So personally, I have not gotten into the weeds of it. We've relied on our partners to do a lot of that cleaning and scrubbing on our behalf, but they have shared a lot of pain points and a lot of verification that they've had to do. So it's not perfect, but it's kind of what we have right now.
Yeah, we did kind of get keyed into University of Wisconsin. They have if you haven't heard of it, the Your Economy time series. It uses a lot the data axle, but it actually has a time series that goes back to 1995 for a lot of businesses, and we're able to get it for our combined statistical area for our region, and it's pretty affordable from a year-to-year basis. Just
Well, thanks for
FYI.
sharing that. Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
know that. I appreciate it.
All right. Before we move on, we do have one quick question, and this is also a question I had myself from Catherine Costin in Indy. Would you like to ask your question, Catherine?
Sure. We have a 9-county regional model, and I am the modeler. And I've toyed with the idea we've discussed. It would be wonderful to have all that resolution in our model, but that's a pretty huge lift. Did you add all of that resolution to your normal travel demand model network, or is that something separate?
It's definitely separate, and that's
Oh,
something
darn.
that our team is looking at. How do we incorporate the benefits of skimming at that block level to really get a better accessibility scores for our TAZs? So that will be our phase 2 that we're really interested in, although we want to make sure we're doing application for our partners.
And I would say
Yeah.
thank you. Y'all do great work. We've had a couple of post model run accessibility tools and some other tools that we have because we work with Caliper, we're a Transcat house. And I believe we have benefited from some of the work that they've done on your model. So because I've heard about that, but good job. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, thank you, everybody. And now we are going to move on to Kent's presentation.
Okay, so we're going to dummy this way down, and I'm going to see if I can figure out how to share my screen with you here in a minute. And we're off. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kent Skellinger, and I come here to you from South Jersey Transportation Planning Organization. And today I'm going to walk you through a joint approach we developed for Cape May and Atlantic counties to estimate seasonal populations. We used sewer flow, water system permits, and housing data. My official title at SJTPO is Technical Program Specialist, but I like to think of myself as an analyst, not the old washed up sports star on TV kind, but someone who's able to extract actionable data and conclusions where other people might not see it. So my early career was not ever so glamorous. I started out as a municipal and county engineer, and I learned a lot about how cities really function. And sometimes it wasn't the easy way. I see analysis as a three-legged stool. You find a source of data, you apply the right tools, and you use some common sense. And here's some background material that a nerd like me calls inspirational. You'll want to read this book, The Drunkard's Walk. Its author, Leonard Moldenov, shows how randomness, chance, and probability can reveal a tremendous amount about our daily lives, and how we often misunderstand statistics and the significance of everything from casual conversation to major financial crises. The author Douglas Hubbard asserts in his book, How to Measure Anything, that the key to solving many problems in business and life in general is the myth that things can't be measured, and it's a significant drain on our nation's economy, public welfare, and the environment, even national security. And there's one other cure for insomnia. Douglas Hubbard has a new book out, which I can't wait to read. I really want to share it with SJTPO's security consultant, whose spam filter manages to block his own email. I hope they're not watching. So here's South Jersey Transportation Planning Organization's jurisdiction. At the bottom of New Jersey, surrounded on 3 sides by water. Here's a Google Earth view showing the proximity to Philadelphia to the west and New York to the north. Even Montreal to the north and west is an estimated mere 8 hours travel time to Cape May. It's estimated that maybe 10% of summer tourism comes from Canada. And the barrier islands like Ocean City and Atlantic City attract thousands of visitors each day, many of them coming from Philadelphia or New York metropolitan areas. Recent trends see more people coming for longer stays as congestion makes weekend trips less convenient. There are thousands of summer homes on the barrier islands, most of which are vacant during the winter period. Thus, the census population is very low. Seasonal campgrounds, mostly in the mainland municipalities of Cape May County, are very popular. According to New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection permits, there are over 26,000 individual campsites in Cape May County alone. With a census population of 96,000, these campsites alone could account for nearly doubling the population. And a growing trend towards converting traditional recreational vehicle sites to a more permanent park home is probably increasing the summer populations using these sites. The official census count falls short in capturing seasonal variation, especially in areas like Atlantic and Cape May County, where tourism drives major fluctuations. Our goal was to develop a realistic estimate of peak seasonal population to better inform transportation planning, utility needs, and public safety decisions. New Jersey Division of Travel and Tourism, within the State Department, posts this data, which is gleaned from the room and sales tax ledgers. You can see that Atlantic County and Cape May County are the largest room tax generators in the state. I would note that Atlantic County's numbers are highly influenced by its casinos, the only legal casinos in the state of New Jersey. Cape May County is particularly interesting because the bulk of their room tax revenue comes in a 10-week summer season. You can see Cape May and Atlantic County generate $8 billion of seasonal revenue towards the tax base of New Jersey. So here's the official story as published by Cape May County's Tourism Department. And there's always a tendency to show the most optimistic numbers to promote investment in tourism, but we must ask, is there data to back this up? I'd also note that they're only showing what, $6 billion in revenue, and the state's estimating it at 8. So we used a hybrid approach that combines 3 data sources: wastewater flow volumes, public water system permits, and housing unit data from the census. Each one adds a piece to the puzzle, helping us to build a more complete picture of how many people are actually present during the summer season. The unsewered areas often rely on small public water systems required to have a permit for systems of 50 or more connections. So we used this system capacity, the number of hookups, and applied an estimated occupancy rate typically between 2 to 4 persons per connection. These figures were seasonally adjusted to reflect peak use. This helps us account for parts of the county not captured in the sewer data. So for the sewered areas, we used monthly wastewater flows from each municipality. So by comparing low flow months like October to high flow months like August, we estimate a seasonal population difference using a standard range of 75 to 100 gallons per person per day. This is a reliable proxy, particularly in dense urbanized areas. To validate our infrastructure-based estimates, we cross-checked against the total housing units by municipality. Assuming an occupancy weight, we can calculate a theoretical maximum population. This would help flag anomalies or overestimates that anchor our projections into the observable housing data. When we combine all three estimates, sewer-based, water system-based, and housing-based caps, to create an integrated seasonal population estimate. And this layered approach is especially useful in areas where mixed infrastructure and various tourist activity give planners and agencies a more accurate baseline for their planning needs. So let's look at the actual numbers. Remember, these are 30-day averages. In Atlantic County, Brigantine leads the pack with a 376% increase over their census population. But Brigantine is rather small at about 8,000 people in the census population. Atlantic City has a much larger impact at 293% increase amongst their 36,000 residents. In Cape May County, the factors are larger. Seattle City is the largest with a 520% increase over their winter population. In Cape May County, a total of 9 of the 21 municipalities increased by more than 157%. Every model has its limitations. Wastewater varies by behavior and property type. We can't be sure that vacationing people use water like long-term residents. Short-term residents may not be accurately captured in the housing unit data. Assumptions like occupancy rates can shift over time, but even with these constraints, this method offers more granularity than the static census data. Our estimates directly support transportation modeling, including the South Jersey Transportation Demand Model, as well as utility service planning, evacuation route design, and even local economic development. These insights make our infrastructure investments more responsive to the actual usage patterns. I want to thank you for your time and attention. I'm happy to share this methodology and collaborate further with any of you. My contact information will be listed at the end, but first I want to thank some special people who helped me in preparing this study and in this presentation. Special thanks to Josh Palumbo at the Cape May County Municipal Utilities Authority for getting us the data on all the various municipalities in Cape May County, to Joseph Pantalone at Atlantic City Utilities Authority for his help in pulling together the much needed data, my boss for all his patience, David Heller at SJTPO, and our executive director, Jennifer Marandino, and all the people that help here at South Jersey Transportation Planning Organization. So I'd love to open it up for your questions or thoughts, and we're especially interested in any insights you might share for how we could refine or perhaps make these studies work better or easier. And I'll be happy to answer any of these questions either at this point in time, or if you think of something later, don't hesitate to contact me with my email address. So I still like to think of myself as an analyst, no matter what HR decides to call me. And I'll be happy to answer any of your questions, or like I said, feel free to contact me at kskellinger@sjtpo.org. And thanks again.
Thank you for that presentation, Kent. That was very interesting, and it just goes to show that there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat when it comes to getting the needed data for a lot of this analysis. So I do want to open up the board for questions for Kent. And while we're doing that, I'm going to post a final poll question.
All right, show my screen share here. Hide it from me.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Kent or for any of our other panelists?
Hey, Stuart, it wasn't a question, but Carl at KernCog had a comment that was interesting. You might want to see if he wants to.
Yeah, Carl, would you like to share your comment? I'm sorry, that got pulled in behind another one there.
Yeah, I spent I think 2 or 3 weeks dealing with, I think it was around 300,000 data axle points for Kern County, California. And we were using proprietary data that we got from the state economic development department. And it was interesting to see what was in the data axle data versus what EDD had. And EDD and where people were assigned to employment or not, especially with we have a lot of agriculture and oil industry jobs, and I was finding trucking companies with 100 employees assigned to a residential house. Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, oil field drilling operations that were assigned to a house that was behind the gates, to a 4,000 square foot house that had a Mercedes parked in the front of it. Yeah, some interesting stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely have to take your data sources with a grain of salt.
Exactly.
Yes. We did have a question from David Heller about the presentations being available. And of course, these will be posted in about a week to the interest group forum. So there will be an opportunity for people to go back and go over these again. And Ken, I do want to thank you for adding 3 more books to my ever expanding to read list.
Thank God for Audible.
Yes, amen.
Who has time to actually flip pages?
Exactly. So do we have any more questions? I think we've got about 5 minutes left. So this is your opportunity. If you do have a question to jump in, I will go ahead and share the results of our final polling question. And if there are no more questions, I will turn things back over to Ellen.
Thank you so much, Stuart. That was great. And thank you to John and Jan, to Alex and to Kent for sharing their presentations. Those were all terrific. And I think that's reflected in the attendance. We had more than 100 folks at one point on the webinar, so that's a great turnout. And all credit to Stuart for pulling together this panel. And all credit, of course, to all of you attending. We really appreciate you joining us for this webinar. I hope to see you at a future AMPO webinar down the road. A reminder that we have a survey we'd love you to respond to tell us future topics and get feedback on this one. And also a reminder, you can pop into that forum if you're an AMPO member and discuss this topic anytime you want to. So hope to see you at a future webinar, and take care.